Okay, so welcome everybody to this AI at ORU seminar. My name is Erik Schaffernicht. I'm one of our Samverkanslektoren in AI och Robotik, so Senior Lecturer for Collaboration in AI and Robotics. And I will be hosting today's talk. So the goal of this seminar series is to showcase some concrete examples and some concrete results about using AI as a tool for interdisciplinary collaboration here at the university. We started with this series purely virtual during the pandemic. So this marks the first time we're actually here in the studio and have guests, a live audience here for that. Welcome, but also welcome to all the people that are joining us on Zoom. So hello. For the people on Zoom, I will be during the talk also monitoring the chat. So if you have questions, feel free to put them there. And when we, after the talk, go into the discussion, I will try to bring them up as well so that we have a good mixture from the questions in the audience online and from the people that are here in person. So it's a lunch seminar, and today's topic is very appropriate for that because we are going to talk about AI and meal sciences. So we have two fantastic speakers lined up. Joined here in the studio, joining me here in the studio is Victor. He's a postdoc in chemistry who joined Örebro University as part of the Food and Health Initiative. And his interest is about how plants are growing and how we can influence the process to make it more healthy, more nutritious, and more tasty. And the sensory feel of our food is what connects him to our other speaker who's joining us online. So it's really hybrid. Our second speaker, senior lecturer in meal sciences, is Anders. And now that we know that how these two people are connected, how we eat and how we feel about what we're eating, you might be asking how those two are connected to artificial intelligence, what this whole talk is about. But that's not a story for me to tell, but I'll hand over to Anders and Victor.
Yes, thank you so much for the presentation. I'm happy to be here. I mean, to talk about food and chemistry together, for me, it's in my top list of subjects. So I'll hand in first to Anders, and then we can start the discussion about the projects we've been working on.
So hello, everybody. I'm terrible sad I cannot be on the side today. I got the cold and the flu, so I don't want to cause any trouble. But I really would like to have seen you in real life, not digital. Anyway, I'll start a little bit about the presentation and what the idea is behind it, and maybe something to think about. And I said to Victor, I have a problem. Sometimes I improvise a little bit, so you need to stop me if I say something that is not, political correct or something like that. The area of AI and meal science, I think it's a very nice combination of concepts and disciplines. That we have the history with the Alan Turing creating the first computer and asking the question, can human think? On the other side, we have the meal science that has transformed into a field now that really is not only about creating the best hedonic gastronomic experience. It's all about, trying to save the world in the sense of finding new crops, cultivation systems, and really to make the climate impact and at the same time make people live longer and have a healthier life. And meal science, from the question that Joseph Conrad asked in 1970 was, can art express things that science cannot? And if we say that meal science is one of the art forms, it's the only art form that includes all the senses, hearing, smell, visual, odor, texture, etc., tactiles, these two symbolize something like the ultimate science and the ultimate art in some way. So I think this topic is very interesting. So if we go to the next slide, Victor. We have So what we're going to talk about today during this lunch seminar is we're going to see what can we learn actually from the tomatoes. Can we learn anything about the tomatoes and how we have made production of tomatoes in the past? We're going to also talk about what can we do and how can we feed RE with sensory data and vice versa. And after that, we're going to present some case studies that we have done that are in the same manner, that are multidisciplinary in this sense that we try to incorporate different disciplines in order to get more progress and also to be more adapted in our methods to fulfill the need of the society. And here we're going to talk a little bit about, how can the interdisciplinary work affect how we can bridge the gap between different disciplines, and vice versa as well. How can the interdisciplinary or how can the multidisciplinary work go back to the discipline and develop the interdisciplinary field of science? And we're going to discuss this from, 3 case studies and one that we have recently published. So we're going to talk about, exploring plant metabolism and crop sensor quality in new futuristic production settings. We're going to also mention a project is focused on food waste and wine, which is a multidisciplinary project, where we focus more on resource efficiency and the focus on reduce waste. How can we work together with RE and biology and technical solutions, and also from different disciplines in order to affect the climate footprint. And we will give some example of that. And finally, we will present an analytical toolbox that, is to explore nutritional value and health effects of food products. So this is how we think about the agenda today. Do you have anything to add, Victor, or shall we move on to the next slide?
We can start to talk about tomatoes. I mean, it's not our main focus of study, but I think it gives a broad idea of the challenges we have. So I have one tomato here. You can see, this is a tomato, how it looks like. So it's very uniform. If you go to the grocery shop and then you see they have this shape, they have a nice color, they look healthy. So this is what we call the modern tomato. So, but tomato is actually a fruit, and we usually use it to eat fruits raw, but tomato it's a bit different. Tomato we usually eat as a culinary vegetable. So it's not like the old tomato varieties. So it's still very much appreciated. And some people eating tomatoes here, I think. And that's used in different culinary contexts, but it's not like the old varieties. So this is an old tomato variety. So we have the new and we have the old one here as well. And these old varieties, they are quite small compared to these tomatoes that we usually produce nowadays. And they don't have a uniform shape. And they are also quite difficult to grow, and they are susceptible to a lot of diseases. So modern tomatoes, they were designed by selection, we can say breeding, but over the centuries, you have selection of tomatoes based on growth, based on appearance, and based on resistance and resilience. So what happened over the centuries is that you have a good plant, it's giving a good tomatoes, then you take these seeds, you grow new plants. And then from these ones, you take the best ones, and then we start this process of, how should say, of breeding. of selection. And then we came out with these new tomatoes varieties. But at some point, we forget about two important aspects: characteristic taste and the nutritional value. So tomatoes nowadays, they don't taste as good as the old varieties. So you can grow anywhere. You can basically buy seeds and grow at your home, but they are not as tasty as the ones we had before. So these varieties, they still exist, but they are a bit more difficult to grow, and therefore you often see these modern tomato varieties. So we can't say that the tomato history, it's a sad history, because tomatoes are good and people still eat tomatoes. But they could have been even better in terms of quality if we had tried to focus a bit more on some other quality aspects instead of only growing more and producing more. So how we can produce like a perfect tomato, and thinking in a broader sense, how we can produce better foods. So that's the whole idea we want to bring here. So, and then we have some challenges, and I think Anders can talk a little bit about that.
Yes, and in regard to the pictures that Victor showed about the tomato, I think it's very interesting if you look on it on a historical perspective. If we ask the question, what is taste? And many of you join us in this seminar will say, it's the taste of strawberry, it's the taste of blueberry, it's the taste of tomato. But this is not actually a taste. The taste is the 5 sensitive elements: sweet, sour, and salt, and bitterness, and umami. The other aspect is flavors. We don't have any words in odors, and we don't have a word for that. We have in the English word flavor, which is a combination of taste and odor sensation, and we don't have that in the Swedish word. And the thing is that, what is the thing that we're talking about that has been eliminated? If you look at this as if you go back to the last picture, Victor, and what has been missing? Well, we looked into appearance, resilience, and growth production, and that has been, the key drivers to produce tomato. And in some way, we have lost something when it comes to the flavors and the odors of it. And what is odor? Odor is something that we feel the complex, metabolites in the tomato, and also connected to how we consume it and how we like this product. And even since 2000 back in history, we have in some way underclassified everything connected to the odor. Immanuel Kant, he said that odor sense is the unnecessary sense. Charles Darwin said 100 years later that the odor sense is the only thing that we have connected, the only sense that it's connected still to the animals. So we have looked upon, the odor sense and what it's bring to the, to the flavors and to the experience of foods as very unnecessary, or also in science as an unnecessary sense. And suddenly now we're facing a future where odor, which is connected to acceptance of food products, is key issue for our survival. So without, so that is one of the challenges. How can we measure that? Well, because it's a lot of data that are interconnected. A lot of data that we collect are very complex. We have, for example, the environment that affects very much. When you eat, for example, if you take the tomato example, for example, if you look at the appearance and think that this would taste juicy and nice, or if you think it's going to taste good, the cellular flow will actually increase, and the cellular flow will bind itself with the bitterness, which actually leads to a psychophysical reaction where it actually tastes fruitier and fresher. And then you have changed the taste of the tomato without even tasting it. We know also the plant and how you produce it has a large impact that Victor showed just now. And we also know that the meal situation, the consumer behavior, it's extremely important. And if you look at this, trying to collect this kind of data, you see that they are, somehow in different disciplines. You see that it's about sensory science, it's about biology, morphology, it's about chemical analysis, etc. So there's a challenge in here to collect data from this different discipline. And the challenges here that we want to talk about is how you can use this information or data from different disciplines to interact so you can get more fruitful data. So the question here, how to generate data linked to food products, to the sensory quality with respect to neutral aspects and the content of consumption. That's the question. What do you say about that, Victor?
No, I think we can jump into the practical part. So we have some case studies. So how we can generate data and integrate these complex parameters into something that we can actually feed artificial intelligence and bring some meaningful information in terms of either nutritional quality, sensory quality, or sustainability. So it's 3 case studies. So the first one, it was published recently, and and then we can discuss a bit more about the other 2 cases. So I think Anders can start presenting our first case study.
Well, yeah, this study we have published recently in food chemistry, and it's actually focusing on how can we work together and trying to collect more data. So the first question is actually that was asked from a biological perspective in regard to morphology. How will taste be affected, and how will the possibility to crop vertically be affected if you stroke the plant, so you imitate the nature, and how can that then affect nutrient context and nutrients and also the sensory flavors? And so the process was actually the basil in this study was cropped with the robotic beds of llamas in Örebro University, and then it was transferred to Grythyttan. And during this, when they had reached a certain amount of maturity level, and the maturity level that we compared in this study was commercially cropped organic basil from the same species, Genovese, and that was the so to say the best found on commercially produced in Sweden. So it's organic and it's produced in a greenhouse. So the question is, of course, can we produce basil that we stroke it, that we see here on the film, which means that you get a smaller morphology of the plants, which make them enabled to be cropped vertical, maybe in a school or in a company or in the basement or whatever. That's one question. Another question is, how will it taste, and how will the nutrients change for that? And we would like then, and the mission was to, or the aim was to compare to the commercial and to see how this kind of automatic cultivation system could be introduced, since taste is a very important fact. So it's includes many paradigms. It's morphology, analytical chemistry, sensory science, artificial intelligence, automation, and robotics. So that is one of the key areas here. Yeah.
So we had been working with these 2 robotic platforms in different projects and try to integrate into this context, not only the application of robotics, but trying to understand also how these simple mechanical stimuli can influence plant metabolism, influence plant growth, and how this can impact the sensory profile of plants. So for this specific work we want to show now, we use this LOMAS platform. So this is actually pak choi, but we use it basil in our study. And then the idea was to use, in addition to robotics and growth parameters, we use a technique called metabolomics. And metabolomics, it's the comprehensive analysis of all small molecules in a biological system. So in other words, we are trying to analyze everything that the plant is producing. So we just harvest the plant, we prepare an extract, and then we analyze that and try to see what is inside the plant. And then we try to combine this and integrate with sensory analysis.
Yeah, and that was performed by, in this case, we did something called liking, which is actually a measurement of the degree of liking that the semi-trained panel had. And another method that we used was JAR, also called just about right. And that is a scale between 1 and 9, and in the middle you find just about right. So for example, you can see if the basil that was cropped here has the right kind of herbiness. If it's too high, you will add something higher at 7, and if it's too low, you will add something like 5, 6 of that. Or 3, 4, something like that. And in that set, you can do a penalty analysis also in combination with the liking to see which attributes in the product that actually affect the quality. And then we also did finally a kata, which is actually more about the profiling to see what key characters the different basil have.
Okay, so how do you combine this sensory data that you were acquiring great data into data on plant metabolism? So how to translate what's happening inside the plants in terms of nutritional quality and also sensory experience. So we came up with one concept that we call sensomics. So we use this concept first to understand the effects of light on plant metabolism and taste. But here we are using mechanical stimulation. And then we apply this concept of sensomics. And the idea is just to use a correlational analysis, linking data on metabolite profile, data on the compounds inside the plant, to the data of consumer experience of sensory quality. So now we have some data. This is the data from the sensory profile. So Anders can.
Well, so you see here's some of the result when we put the data together. So the first you see is the process. We start with a semi-trained panel, and then we did this different kind of tests. And as you can see here in A, what we actually had in the A was basil in the fresh form. So I had a controlled group, which was the robotic cultivated, and the green one, which is the treated with mechanical stress, and the gray one is the commercial one. In the setting B, we used that in a culinary context. So we use the basil to produce a pesto sauce, also to see not only the fresh basil in itself, the quality and the taste profile, but also in the use in a kitchen and exposed in a kitchen for a group of highly trained consumers. And what you can see in the result here, the one that had the highest liking was the robot cultivated, and there were no significant difference between the robot cultivated that was cropped without stress and the one that was cultivated with stress. So actually, but there were a significant difference between the robotic cultivated and the commercial one in all settings. So it has the results showed from the sensory study that has said that not only that the basic crop by the robot had better taste, but the appearance, smell, the texture, everything, as well as the overall liking was significant higher for robot cultivator, which is very impressive data, I would say. And when we look to the pesto sauce, you can also see the same thing. And you can also see that some of the profile that connected to, for example, jar and the liking was even more closer to the robotic cultivated. So yeah, and this you can read more about in the article that in food chemistry. So I will not take up much more this time for this. So we can go on.
So the sensory analysis, they showed some differences between the commercial samples and the samples we grow on Lomas, and then we harvested these samples and we did a chemical analysis. So we used this metabolomic approach. So we prepared the samples, prepared sample extracts, and then we run on this equipment. Here it's called a liquid chromatograph coupled to high resolution mass spectrometry. So this separate the compounds inside the plant extract, and then we can detect using mass spectrometry. And then after that, we did the data processing, and then we analyze and try to find the differences. So for this paper, this study, we focus on 115 compounds that are produced by the plants. And then we have organic acids that are related with taste. We have some sugars, lipids, and we have phenylpropanoids and other compounds that are considered secondary metabolites. So they are metabolites that the plant produce when there is some stress. So it's kind of adaptation mechanism. So plants, they can't move, so they start to produce different compounds to try to adapt to the environment. So we tried to compare the different groups. We found on the figure B that control stressed plants and commercial plants, they are quite different in relation to specific metabolites. And these metabolites, they are mainly these secondary metabolites. And we know that secondary metabolites, they can be associated to color, taste, therefore they can have some impact on the sensory aspects. So we have this data, we have the sensory data, and then we use it, the Bayes spurious partial correlation algorithm. So the idea was basically to draw correlations between the sensory data and the metabolomics data. So we can try to find if there is any association between metabolites and taste. So here it's perhaps our most important finding. So we basically draw a big correlation table, include data from sensory and metabolomics data. And this is only the strong correlations and significant correlations we found between these two data sets. And with that, we can draw associations between what actually happening inside the plant to what the people are experiencing in terms of taste. So this is important not only for this project, if we think, but it can also help us to understand basal sensory quality in general. So if you want to, for example, increase, so if you want to increase, for example, the juiciness, and if you want to have a more sweet basil, which are positive parameters, then we can try to focus on increase the amount of this metabolite, linalool glucoside, which is a terpene from secondary metabolism, or we just try to increase the production of these secondary metabolites. So how we can do that? Then we need to try out and perhaps change the light, stress a little bit the plant so the plant can produce these compounds. And with that, you can have basil that can taste better. We also found that there are some other compounds, for example, simple organic acids, they are not positively associated with quality. So there are some aspects like taste, appearance, and odor of basil. They are negatively associated with organic acids. So we can track this as well and check if you have some treatment that is increasing that, perhaps it's not good for the final quality. So that's the main idea of this concept. So what?
So what? Yeah, so what? What can we do now with this information? Yeah, as you said, we have like, the sensormatics and the sensor analysis and the metabolic approach. And to see the connection that, as you mentioned, is very interesting, of course, to see how it can affect the production and how it's related to how the consumer will experience the production. And also vice versa, as you said in the beginning, to get that information back to RE and the development of this stroking and robotic cultivation system in order to make it more efficient also in regard to what it produces. So it's actually an exchange from both directions. So that is one learning experience. Another is also what happens now if we add something to this. What you see here is the connection, the strong connection, as Victor mentioned, between sensory attributes that are important for the liking for the consumer, and how they are also linked to different metabolics and also nutrient content. So what if we, for example, also add to this perspective different kind of cropping system? For example, we take an urban garden in Stockholm, we take polyhydric cultivation from Denmark, or a local garden in somewhere else. So we have different kind of crops, maybe tomatoes, where we also can trace the climate impact on each. Then we have another aspect of this. So of course, we can add more dimensions to this analysis where you can find these connections that are also crucial for the consumer in the complex meal situation. Yes, we continue.
So I think now, Anders, we can describe briefly the other case studies. I think we are quite running out of. So.
Yeah, I think it's my fault. I talk too much. So I will just give some example of other projects that we work with, and this is one of them. It's about increasing circularity and resource efficiency to reduce waste. And if you take the next slide, Victor. And the why in this study is actually to increase, as I said, circularity research efficiency. And it's a project where I created a team of researchers from all over the world. We have a very significant researchers from Örebro University, and we have also Charles Brand from Oxford University, and from Washington and Spain, and Alan the Royal Institute in Copenhagen. And what is the aim of this? Yeah, the aim is, the aim is to increase the circularity by joint forces, work together over different disciplines. Exactly the same way that I and Victor have done in this project. And in this project, it's about developing methods and techniques that combines different kind of knowledge, and also bridge the gap doing so between different paradigms. We can change to next picture, Victor. Yeah, and how we do that? Yeah, for instance, combining sensory and chemical science analysis with analogical inductive methods and experiment psychology to identify, understand, and communicate critical consumer attributes. What are the consumer attributes in the tomato that they don't like it? Or is it actually they're missing something? They miss the part of the orchestra that was taken away for 5 years ago. And also we can use these kind of experiments to see how consumption really occur in a meal science context. How will that affect the result? We can move on to the next. In this project, it's about develop a method to save complex food products, which has a high effect on the climate. And in this, we use we use wine. It's a lot of wine that go to waste because of it changes, and the production is not like putting a button. So it's a lot of wine all over the world that go to waste just because that become a new vintage, and the producers, importers, and even the consumers would like not, they think that the connection between the content and how it tastes is not fulfilling the satisfaction. So what we've done here is a couple of studies. I worked together with Photographic Museum in Stockholm, and we created some shapes to describe wines in another manner. And we used a method which I developed, is an analogical training method to find both holistic words and analytical words to see how we can communicate the wine experience that is very complex to consumers without talking about where it comes from. So we totally break the classic orthodox paradigm. We're talking of production, grapes, vintages, etc. We focus on what it tastes. And on what you see on the right-hand side is also packaging that we tasted. And this is actually a totally good, perfect wine that have been relabeled and put into a new context. And it shows a very success. So it's about blending new wines and also to just by combining sensory analysis with chemical analysis, and to find these critical consumer groups and to make new blends and to save wines. So that is that. Now it's your turn, Victor.
Just pitch the last case. So we've been talking a lot about sensory profile and metabolomics, plant metabolism, and try to understand how composition can affect taste and try to create tools for that. But the idea of this last case study is to go a bit more to the nutritional profile instead of going to the sensory profile. So we can have another dimension that we can work in order to improve food quality. So, for example, I brought the example of tryptophan. Tryptophan, it's one specific molecule, and it has been published at several good journals about the role of this tryptophan, how can influence our health. So this compound, it's actually metabolized during the digestion. So our gut microbiota can transform into other compounds, and then these compounds have positive impact on health. So our task here was actually try to apply this knowledge. So how we can increase tryptophan in plants, and how we can prove that this increase in tryptophan will actually produce beneficial health effects. So we create this toolbox. So we've been working on that. We have 3 different research groups here from Örebro working. So we've been testing different plants. We have found that if we use, for example, a small amount of UV light, you can increase tryptophan levels. And then we can do metabolomics to prove that. And then we had the NGBI at the medical school that they did an in vitro system to simulate the fermentation. And then we check it with metabolomics, also these fermentation extracts, to see if we can see the tryptophan changing and producing something else. And then we test this on human cells. So that was the whole idea. It's not only to go from farm to fork, it's try to go a bit further on that. So we have found that if we just supplement with a small amount of UV light, the plants, we can change the fermentation profile, we can activate specific receptors in cells, and this is associated with beneficial effects on health. So that's the main team working. So we have people from chemistry, people from biology, and people from the School of Medical Sciences. working with nutrition, helping us with that. So that was the main, that was the idea. So these are the case studies. So just thinking, just to pinpoint that for us, interdisciplinarity, it's the way to use AI wisely. So we need a lot of brains in different perspectives, working synergy to discover what we really need. And yeah, to produce better foods, healthier foods, and perhaps in more environmentally friendly systems. So, Anders?
No, actually, I think we have covered everything. And as I say, I think it's now open. We should take some questions. Yeah, what do you think, Victor?
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
So, in the studio here, you can show your hands. That's easy. If you're online, two options. Either you write in chat and I will relay your question, or if you're willing, you can also raise your hand virtually and then we will let you speak if you're willing to do that. First, let me start here with a quick question. In a sense, you showed basically also our robot that was stroking the basil, right? This is a very interesting thing to do. If you relate that story to people, the reactions are always a big smile before they ask why, right? So I'm, as a roboticist, for us, it's a nice and interesting application to stroke basil. How do you perceive when you talk about your research in your area, in your fields, and how do people react to using a robot to stroke basil?
As I mean, the idea of using the robot platform, we know that plants, they have mechanosensors. So thinking on a biological, biochemical perspective of plant metabolism. So there has been a lot of studies showing that wind, for example, they can change plant morphology. That's like light, and the plant follows the light. And then we just thought, okay, so we can maybe do that in a more controlled way. So if you can use a robot for that we know how much to stroke, and then we can maybe trace the metabolites on it, then we can put these things together and build something that we can actually control. But yeah, it's kind of funny because we put this robot platform on the greenhouse we have on one of our buildings, and everyone, what is that? I mean, I can do that as well. I can, but we need something controlled. We need to control the condition. So, but yeah, it's really different, I would say. Really interesting.
I'm not sure, what kind of reactions do you get when you report about robots stroking basil in your field?
Well, I think it's they are not. I think I presented this idea actually, and if we have a unit ready, we will have it at Fotografiska Museum in Stockholm, because it's very interesting to see the human interaction with AI, and how will we react when. Are we more concerned that it's a robot, or are we more concerned that it's a greenhouse that use, industrial production in another way? So the idea of what is green cropping is I think, very interesting, and that is one of the key questions that I will always, get with, can it be better than the human? But the interesting paradox here is also that by stressing the plants, as we mentioned, is actually to imitate the nature in itself. So suddenly we have created an artificial intelligence, like a robot, that imitates the nature. I mean, it's quite funny when you think of it, and that might be also one of the key solutions for using it.
Thank you. There was a question here in the studio. Let's go with that next.
To sum that up, stressed basil tastes better.
It depends on stress. It's a kind of broad definition. So we are actually, I can say, stimulating. It's a good stress. So definition of biology, we call this eustress. it's a good stress. It's a stress that pushes the plant to produce something different, but it doesn't stress at a point that the plant can't grow. So that was something we need to find a balance. So if we stress too much, then the plant will not grow, the plant will die. But yeah, it's a stress. It's taking the plant out of the comfort zone.
Taste-wise, the results were robust, consistent throughout the experience, or you noticed that some people had widely different experiences with respect of the feedback before and after the stress-inducing?
I think Anders can talk a bit more about the sensory data. But
could you repeat the question? I have a cat that went bananas here. Sorry.
The question is from the point of view of the robustness. Did you notice, of the results, did you notice that the sensory experience was more or less similar between the different people that took the experiment, or there were some people that very different perception in terms of if the taste improved, if it was sweeter, and so on and so forth?
No, I would say it was quite homogeneous data in regard to that, and that's why also the significant level was very, when it comes to the acceptance, both in liking and in of not liking overall, but also in the appearance and in the smell and the tactile sensations. So, yeah.
Thanks.
So, I don't say Tao, yeah.
Could I ask a question about your future plan? What are you planning to do in the future to progress this kind of research?
I think the idea is we have this third case study that we want to incorporate this dimension related more to the nutritional profile. So I think the idea now is to bring everything together. We have sensory analysis, correlation with plant metabolism. Now we can try to correlate with nutritional profile and put these three dimensions together to try to build something. And then after we get this correlational data, then it's easier for us to track during the plant growth if we can produce something better, if we can change the growth conditions and some specific parameters during plant production to do something better in terms of quality.
It's very interesting research, I think.
I can just only add also that one thing we did discuss, which we think was quite, what we discussed yesterday, Victor, what would be very interesting to do is to, I got a question from a research seminar for a couple of weeks ago from a Portuguese research, and it's can you use it for simulation? And we discussed that. Can we actually use these robots and control it with UV light and everything to simulate how the tomato would taste when we have a temperature that has raised with 5 degrees? And can we do it on the other side? How did the tomato taste for 20 years? I think this is a very good also example to simulate, how would the future crop bean taste? And I think that could be something that could also bring some attention, awareness about, consumer when they think about consumption and decreasing the climate footprint. If they would actually taste, tomato that will, how it will simulate the taste by cropping it in that manner in the robotic cultivation system, how it tastes in 10 years if we continue this development. So it's a lot of possibilities.
In the basal study, the machine condition was at a steady pace. Are there any ideas about having an alternating pace or having some pauses?
Yeah, we had, it was actually stroking 100 times per day. And then it was, we divided in a period of 8 hours, these 100 strokes per day. So, but yeah, it's just a start. I think you play around like the regimes and try to do maybe just close to the harvest, for example, then you will not affect that much plant growth, but you can maybe metabolism in a different way. So the more data we gather using different parameters, we can control more. We have.
Let's go with Niklas next.
Hey, thanks. I'm having a hard time finding sort of the AI in this. You have a very controlled stroke. It's not an artificial intelligence that sort of controls the stroke.
Yeah.
Would it be possible to set up an environment where an artificial intelligence controls the water supply, the strokes, and so on?
Yeah. That's
based on maybe a visual example.
That's a great, a good point. I mean, that's the main idea. Now we know which are the metabolites. We can trace them. So you can use for these secondary metabolites, for example, you can measure the absorbance of light on the leaves, and then you can have one idea of how many secondary metabolites are being produced. And then when we incorporate these together, then you can maybe somehow, okay, now you need to decrease the stroke regime because you have enough secondary metabolites that will relate to a specific taste. So that's the main idea now, to try to put AI and try to feed AI with this data we have to make something that can be more automated.
Yeah, that's the next step, of course.
There was another question over there.
Yeah, I have to think about the question, but the comment is when it comes, for example, to aging and nutrients that we need to move more to plants-based proteins, for example, more plant-based foods. One of the main problems is that to have the same effect that maybe meat, you need to eat a lot of volume. So how this technology can help maybe to reduce the volume of the plants, but still giving a lot of the same quality in proteins. So is there something?
Yes, I think for proteins, it's a bit tricky when we think on macronutrients, because proteins, they are related with food, its structure itself. So you don't change proteins if you don't change food. But when it comes to think on nutritional density, general view, that's what we are trying to do now. So we have the tomato that perhaps the nutritional value is not, can be better. And then we just try to give this eustress to the plant so they can produce more, and then you can have more nutritional density. Perhaps you don't need to eat a lot. We just need to eat better.
Yeah, maybe amino acid content or more like that, like that.
There was another question.
Yeah, actually, so you now know which things make the basil, for example, taste better. What if it's these things that are like not healthy to eat? Because sometimes things that make food taste good aren't necessarily healthy.
Yeah.
What do we do then? Like our basil tastes really good now, but it's not
that
healthy anymore.
That's a good point. We saw, at least for basil, that the change related to quality, that appears to be associated with the secondary metabolites. And these secondary metabolites, they have antioxidant properties. So they are good. I mean, we might increase something that it's not perhaps too healthy, but in general, for basil, we're lucky. But if we incorporate also the toolbox that we can evaluate the nutritional profile and see actually the effects of these extracts on human cells, and perhaps even if we go further in clinical studies. So you grow two basil, one control, one with change in the production parameters, then you can maybe test it. But think this need validation for sure.
Yeah, and also to add to that, it's not a linear process. This is not some hyperdeductive structure of this. It's an abductive structure. So of course, to do this, to identify, key metabolites and how they interact with the taste, the knowledge of that and the consumer knowledge is of course very important. Also to go back to the production. So that is very important to see that we have not found a solution with this, and how can we use this information? This is the information and knowledge they have how to continue work to also feed artificial intelligence with data to make this and identify these links. And as I described earlier, we have possibility here also to build in more dimension, also in regard, for example, climate footprint for different production systems. So you can get, not only taste, but also how good it is for the human being and for the earth. So this is just one way to, start figuring things out and find connections and visualize them. Yeah.
Okay, I will take a final question here myself. That's more a bit philosophical, maybe. So you mentioned also this long-term idea to build models to predict the taste, maybe after the growth period has ended, or maybe in a couple of years, breeding the tomatoes or the basil. Now, an AI system itself has no concept about taste. And Anders, you on the presentation already mentioned that we as humans have already a problem defining taste and flavors. You made that difference. Is it then wise to use a machine trying to explain something we are unable to do ourselves already? Do you see an advantage or a disadvantage in this approach?
If you ask me, I see an advantage in the sense that we use, can a machine think? Well, not as a human, I would say, but we can use our knowledge to identify how we can use its knowledge to send information to AI, I think. Sorry, I lost the question. You asked about flavors. You said something about flavors, and I start thinking about machines. Yeah.
We as humans are struggling defining flavors for ourselves, and now we're asking a machine to help us with that. That has no sense of taste or no concept of taste, right? Or flavors.
No. Yeah, and this is one of the problems because we humans, we have, the earliest memories that we have in life, the earliest odor memories that we have, they're connected to that part of brain. So odor is actually, as you probably know, the oldest sense and very strongly related to what we like and don't like. And you don't have that. You can imitate that with artificial, but you cannot. The robot can never experience it itself. But therefore, we can use this kind of knowledge to find interactions between, to use this method to identify critical attributes. Why is it so that when we crop this kind of tomatoes, that it tastes good? Is it because of this combination of metabolites? And can we train the computer to identify these algorithms that also take care of the production?
And I can also when you talk about taste, it's something very individual. It's not that we don't know. We know, but you know something. I know something. So
now the machine knows something else. Yeah. How do we fit that together?
So
definitely an interesting problem.
Everyone that will like the basil from Lomas, they might prefer the basil commercial because it has a taste that he thinks it's better. But we know how to make this. We know which are the compounds associated to this taste or to this sensory experience. So I think that's the main idea. I mean, we can control the taste. If it's a good or bad taste.
Good. So at least here in the studio, you people had also food. So I hope you're a little bit less hungry after that hour. But I also hope you're a little bit more hungry in the sense of intellectually hunger. So Don't hesitate to contact our speakers if you have more questions, more details. If you have an appetite for different topics, the series AI at ORU will return in February 2023. So keep your eyes open when the next dates will be and the topics will be published. And finally, not only do I want to thank our speakers again, but also to the people behind the scenes or behind the cameras that are working hard to make this series happen. So thank you, Carolina, Susanne, and Anders. So thanks, everybody.